So UFC 320 is coming up next weekend, and the main event is the rematch between Alex P and the training partner of Lucas Tracy, Big Ank. So in this video, I've decided to predict and break down this fight, and you already know how it goes. Let's go over the strengths and weaknesses of each fighter, starting off with Pereira. And Pereira's biggest strength is of course his striking, and when you think of his striking, the first thing that comes to mind is of course that left hook, which is just crazy powerful, and he's extremely good at setting it up too. Matter of fact, he has crazy power in everything he throws. Then there's also the leg kicks, which, let's be honest, are probably the best leg kicks in the game. He outkicked the leg kicking merchant Adesanya, and even though he is unorthodox, he's also extremely technical. Now, he does have some weaknesses. The biggest one is obviously his grappling. I mean, he does have good takedown defense, but have you ever seen him get up from the ground? Like, the guy has good defense, but he doesn't really know how to get up on the feet. And on the feet, his biggest weakness are guys with fast hands. That's just very clearly the case when you look at the Khalil Roundtree fight and his first fight with Ankalaev. Both of them gave him trouble on the feet. And Pereira's also not exactly a Strickland on the feet either. He does get hit a decent amount, but he rolls with his punches really well, so it does kind of get cancelled out. But let's talk about Big Ank, and a lot of people have this misconception about Big Ank that he's a grappler because he's from Dagestan, he has the beard, and his last name ends with an EV. But the real meat and potatoes behind this style is his boxing. He's very fast, he has very good technique as well, and he also has really good counters. Matter of fact, his whole game is basically just to pressure you with his boxing and force you to throw so he can dish out a counter. He's definitely one, if not the best boxer in the division. On top of that, he has sneaky power too, but besides his boxing, he actually has pretty good teeps as well. Now, I just said Ankalaev isn't a grappler, and even though he doesn't grapple too much, what you need to understand is, if you're from Dagestan, you automatically know how to grapple, unless your name is Magomed. But all jokes aside, he is one of the best grapplers in the division, but that doesn't really say too much because light heavyweight doesn't really have that many good grapplers anyways. But that said, he does have one very obvious weakness, and that is leg kicks, because he stands so lead leg heavy, and as a result, the guy got his legs absolutely destroyed by Blachowicz, and Alex Pereira also landed a lot of leg kicks in their fight. And I also feel like sometimes Ankalaev is a bit too passive. But let's go over the win conditions for each fighter, starting off with Pereira, and listen, there needs to be more aggression. I understand that Ankalaev has the speed advantage, and he has the power to hurt Pereira, but Pereira has stupid power, and he only needs to catch him once, and it's over for Big Ank. And he also just can't let Big Ank walk into boxing range without any consequences. I mean, looking back at the first fight, where were the teeps? Where were the jabs? They need to be here in this fight. There has to be some kind of long range weapon that makes it harder for Ankalaev to just advance into boxing range. And you also can't forget about the calf kicks. Ankalaev is always super susceptible to leg kicks, and he landed a lot in their first fight. And I think he should keep at it in this fight too. Now, Big Ank on the other hand is gonna really want to approach this fight pretty similar to the first one. He's gonna want to pressure Pereira with his boxing and then attempt takedowns and set up those takedowns better in order to instill that takedown threat in Pereira's mind and make Pereira even more hesitant on the feet. And you know, even though this conflicts with my code of morale, he's gonna want to use the good old cage hugging strat, and I know it's gonna be super boring if he does, and I'll be raging at 5 AM in the morning, but he held him up for the entirety of round 4, so he can't deny that it proved to be very effective in their first fight. But who do I think is gonna win this fight? To be honest, guys, I think it's gonna be tough for Alex P. I know the potards are saying he's more locked in now, but is he really? Can you really say that with confidence after seeing the clip of Nina Drama smelling his feet? I'm joking, I actually think he is more locked in, but people forget, man, Big Ank was also a big compromise in their first fight because the fight took place during Ramadan. So I actually expect them both to be more prepared in this fight. However, I will say, Pereira is creeping up there in age. He is 38, and that's not too bad for a light heavyweight, but he probably can't make any drastic improvements at that age. Aside from maybe his grappling, because he's still pretty new to that area of the game. However, watching back the first fight, I actually thought they both had room for improvement. Obviously, the main issue for Pereira was how passive he was, and that was mainly due to Ankalaev having faster hands, but also because of the threat of the takedown. And while the speed is always going to be an issue, Pereira did stuff all the takedowns, and I believe he is going to be more confident in his takedown defense and let his hands go in this fight. And while Ankalaev has the speed advantage, Pereira has that X factor, which is his power. He only needs to catch him once, so he's not totally outmatched in the boxing. Now that said, I think Ankalaev will also make adjustments. I mainly think he's going to be more grappling focused in this fight. He held up Pereira against the cage for the entirety of round 4, and he didn't really even attempt to hold him up against the cage in the other rounds. So going into this fight, they will know it will be very effective. And I think he'll also attempt more takedowns too, and even if he fails the takedowns, that will just reinforce the threat in Pereira's mind, which will make him more hesitant on the feet and in turn make Big Ank's boxing even more effective. Now all that said, I'm gonna be honest, I'm going with Big Ank. I just can't ignore the fact that Nina Drama sniffed his feet. Pereira just isn't his usual stoic self. Now I'm joking, it obviously doesn't come down to that only. I do believe Pereira is gonna be more aggressive, but I just kinda think he's gonna get outdone in the boxing exchanges. The speed of Ankalaev is gonna be too much, like it was in their first fight. And Ankalaev also just has better defense than Pereira. Even though Pereira has that left hook, Ankalaev showed that he has the power to hurt Pereira as well. And when Pereira is more aggressive, that's also when he's the most vulnerable for counters. And Ankalaev has a really good counter game. I even think that's his bread and butter, his meat and potatoes, so to speak. And if you factor in the grappling on top of that, it's gonna be a very tough night for Pereira. If Ankalaev gets this fight to the ground, which he probably won't if we're being real, but there's always the possibility, Pereira is just gonna be at a huge disadvantage. And as I said earlier, he doesn't even need to get the fight to the ground. If he fails a takedown, he's still succeeded in reinforcing that threat in Pereira's mind, which will in turn make his boxing even more effective. But besides that, he completely shut down Pereira when he had him up against the cage, and I think he will definitely utilize more of that in this fight too. But of course, Alex Pereira still has the X factor, his power, which I think is worth betting on in this fight, and he can of course implement teeps and jabs to keep Ankalaev from just walking into range. And he of course also has the calf kicks, which landed a lot in the first fight, but is the calf kicks really enough? I understand he landed a lot, but he never really crippled Ankalaev's legs like Blachowicz did. So ultimately, I'm just gonna have to go with Big Ank, and it pains me to do that because I love Alex Pereira. At one point, he was probably my favorite fighter in the UFC. He's still one of my favorite fighters, and I really hope he wins. But listen, man, I understand Pereira has his left hook, but Lucas Tracy has been throwing big meaty hooks at Big Ank this whole camp, so Pereira's left hook is not going to be a problem. Now that said, I think that's it for today, guys. Check out my last video where I talked about how Alex Pereira lost his hype. But anyways, thanks for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Am I just a Big Ank glacier, or do you agree with my prediction? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and also don't forget to share this to an Alex Pereira fan, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye!